The regular meeting of the Swansea Board of Selectmen for today, October 5th, is called to order.
I'll make a motion, we approve the regular meeting minutes of September 28th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion, we approve the non-public meeting minutes, number 1 and number 2 of September 28th.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion?
Let's do that. And are we good with it?
Is that the deed?
Yeah.
I can mention it. Yeah, either way, you can do it as part of the consent agenda and add it, or do it as a separate item, either way.
Which would you prefer?
At this point, we can just add it to the consent agenda. So it's basically one of the properties we just tax deeded on Winchell Road has been redeemed by the mortgage holder. So it gets deeded back to the former owner. So it's been paid, total amount due has been paid in full.
Okay. So that included it. Is there anything else? Motion made and seconded. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody online?
We do have someone on the phone online.
All right, anyone want to participate in public input before we? Hi, Dan.
How are you?
Well, how are you?
I'm doing okay. My name's Dennis Blair. I live over on Walmart Road in Swansea. I'm actually coming here tonight on behalf of the Nanac School Board. I'm hoping I could get 10 or 15 minutes at your next meeting to go over our elementary school renovation project that we will be having a bond, I believe, on the warrant articles in March of next year.
Correct.
And so it's just basically informative. We had some pamphlets and flyers that we're hoping to be able to put at the town hall, maybe the library with your approval, as long as you guys like to say. And that's about it.
That'd be great.
When's our next meeting?
October 19th, so 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
And once we get a little closer, I think I have all your contact info. I'll just let you know the time.
Okay.
Do you have any preference, earlier, later, flexible?
Whatever is best for you guys.
Perfect. That's what we'd like to hear. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Anyone else? Hi, Kristen. I'm sorry.
Kristen Strongly. I just wanted to request that a response or an update be given to my request of a few weeks ago for the addendum to the contract with between the town and Swansea County about acknowledging the third-party status use of town property for New Hampshire RSA. Just requesting that an update be given on that. It doesn't have to be right now. We don't have one. I would like to hear something back on that request.
We don't have one. We are seeking legal advice with regard to it. We have two separate opinions currently. So we're just not in a position to give you a direct answer.
Okay, well, that's an update, so I appreciate that.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else? Anybody online?
That has unmuted.
Okay, Chief, welcome.
Need to buy some time.
I need to buy some time.
About how long it
Chad.
takes from
How we doing?
that much time.
We're doing excellent.
Great,
Would you like me to?
absolutely. Ashley's here, so it's good time.
Is there a preference as to where I put these in, Mr. Chairman? Right there?
If you can come up with a means by which to remove these posts.
Oh, wait a minute, we talked about that. Can't do that.
They're historically significant.
We got them now.
I wouldn't like what I'd see. There.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chad Brandon, civil engineer with Fieldstone Lake Consultants. I was asked to come to the meeting this evening just to provide an update as to where we stand with the workout at Swansea Fields. At the request of Mr. Jasmine, I have brought some extra copies too to put in front of you guys in case we wanted to mark up plans or have an opportunity to answer any questions. So I'd like to hand those out if I could.
Sure.
Each one. I'm gonna bring this.
Yes.
So since the last time we were in front of you talking about this project, we have had the opportunity to meet with Ashley with the rec department and take a look at the fields from a standpoint of addressing some of the comments at the last meeting. There was some feedback relative to trying to maintain the sliding hill. There was also some feedback relative to trying to work out a layout that would allow for some soccer fields to be maintained within the field area of O'Brien and West Fields. So we were able to get together with Ashley and actually create a slight modification to West and O'Brien Fields where we could accommodate a large soccer field in the outfield area of West Fields, which that soccer field meant the larger dimension that Ashley provided, which is 225 feet long and 150 feet in width. Part of the reason why we were able to make that field work actually is we proposed 140-foot temporary fencing in the same location as where the sliding activities happen, so we would be able to maintain that. Locating this soccer field in this location would allow for a permanent fence to be installed between the two fields, which was definitely an interest of Swans and Cal Ripken to try to minimize the amount of temporary fencing if at all possible. By doing that, we were still able to provide 2 additional soccer fields, youth fields, inside the outfield area of O'Brien. Those fields are dimensioned at 135 feet in length by 105 feet in width. I believe that really satisfied the requirements of the rec department, so we're happy to present that this evening. I think that all in all, the modifications that we're sharing this evening hopefully address all of the concerns relative to the fencing and the field layout. There's a number of revisions that we unfortunately haven't had an opportunity to make for the plan, which are really extending the fencing 75 feet on this side, some no parking signs like we had talked about at the meetings. Those are minor cleanup items that we're hoping that we can incorporate, but we thought it would be important to come before everybody, the selectmen this evening and hopefully get a decision on the plan so that we can finalize it. It's our opinion that the remainder of the items are really minor in cleanup in nature, and we hope that we would do that. So I'm here to answer any questions and do my best on that level. I'm happy Ashley's here too. Maybe she can speak to this revised layout as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Ashley, did you have an opportunity to work this through?
Yep,
You did? You've seen it?
yep, no, I went right to Chad's office and we played with the drawings right then and there for everything. That's where the additional fields came in. I gave him all the dimensions of all the fields that we need and how we could fit them all on. And ideally having the 2 additional 6 to 8-year-old fields would be huge because we already put one on coal. With losing lane, we would have lost one of those fields at that location. And this way it provides all the fields that we need at that location. And if not, be able to get the space to expand one more field within a month.
Okay, thank you. Sly?
It just, the only thing I see offhand is a playground area. Will there be some extra fencing to protect that or screening or anything?
So we're proposing the new playground area on the backside of the outfield of Coal Field, and we are proposing fencing around that'll be entirely enclosed.
Thinking about balls coming from the field itself.
So Cole has about a 20-foot fence, and so the thought is actually by putting the playground area against the backside of that fence.
It's 20 foot there.
Yeah.
It's very high.
They've got mesh fencing.
Yeah, it's these chain link fence is only about 6 feet, but there's poles with mesh fencing that goes up about
Perfect.
20 feet. So locating it there would actually provide a nice safe area for the kids to play, unlike its current location in the left field area. where,
Right.
I mean, there's been some.
Foul balls.
It's a little spooky.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pleased with the involvement of Ashley and the school. And the fact that we've got 3 fields for soccer, I think answers the question very, very nicely. And I think that the portable fencing is also a good addition. So therefore, I'm pleased with what I'm seeing.
Okay.
And I don't want you coming back again.
Just a quick question on the upper corner. How is that with regard to the elevation?
Yes, that's a great question. So the elevation basically at the corner of the soccer field is where it starts to climb. So the entire soccer field is located on really nice, pretty flat ground. The temporary fencing would essentially run just from the west of the scoreboard all the way over to what's almost dead center field on the proposed west field location. So you can see the tree lines where they kind of shoot up the hill. That's where there's really 2 fingers that come down where the sliding occurs. So that entire area would be open. It's about 140 foot open. But the elevations are really good in the field area. Once you leave the fields, that's when the elevation climbs, and that's when the activities shift to sliding.
And you're confident, based on the terrain, that the permanent fencing would not interfere with the sliding?
That's correct. Yeah, we took a look at, and I think that, the final plan will probably show, those fingers a little bit more, but the limits of the fencing have been proposed outside of that sliding zone. And so we don't anticipate that the fencing should be an obstacle at all.
Okay, and how is that center roadway going to be utilized?
So we haven't finalized the center roadway, but I think that my understanding of internal discussions is that there will be gates on either side, just like we have shown, and that it will only be used for emergency purposes. And it sounds like it will likely be a lawn surface, but because of the underlying soil conditions being an old sand pit, that will certainly support emergency vehicles. My recommendation, whether it's taken or not, would be to at least have a 10-foot gravel path through there, so that people don't set up a tent or something in that fashion in an area that would be presumably needed if there's an emergency situation. But there's a lot of room through this center corridor now, where I'm sure if it was an emergency situation, things could be moved and shifted accordingly. I think that not allowing any parking through this area is a huge improvement, and allows for a lot of safe pedestrian passage between the fields and the concession stand. And there's a lot of children that play there and are frankly unwatched at times. So there's they will jump out and run to the cook shack on occasion. So I think it's a great layout. I think a lot of improvements have been made. There's some final cleanup items that need to be addressed, but outside of that, I'm hoping that everybody's happy with the current plan.
And Michael, what are they seeking from the board?
I think pending the completeness review meeting with the planning board, I think they're looking to get started doing some work, I think still this fall, right, Chad?
Yeah, it's my understanding in talking with Mr. Hodes, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight as he's traveling, that they would like to start on, pouring some concrete for the dugouts and stuff like that before the winter months come in, so that they can try to line up.
That's beyond my question. I was just curious, what are they looking for from the board?
I think to show that we came to consensus on trying to accommodate everything.
Okay, all right. That's all right. No, thanks. Richard,
Going to your fencing. Why is there a need for permanent fencing in those outfields? Is it, I know you mentioned before the 220 foot to satisfy caliber two. That's a distance that can be done with temporary fencing. Temporary fencing has a longevity or life expectancy of upwards of 20 years. And this is from the AD from Manhattan High School, who has temporary fencing in their baseball outfield. Permanent fencing doesn't allow for any further expansion of any sliding or anything further on those hills behind or beyond the outfield. To me, the temporary fencing is more in keeping with the overall philosophy that this is supposed to be a recreational area and potential use versus satisfying Colorado baseball. And I'm saying this as a citizen of Swansea, not of anything else. I was out there, this is your soccer situation. This past Saturday, I was out there, every field was being used. Parking was everywhere. I just don't see where we're really getting to where we're satisfying the philosophy or the intent of that property. And this goes back to letters of conveyance back to 1979, where the property is specifically handed over to the town for recreational use, not specifically for Colorado baseball or for soccer. It is for the town use as a recreational facility. And as I say, putting in a permanent fence across that outfield limits what can be done with it. Granted, you can put in the soccer field, but if you want to do something else in the future, you can limit it.
I mean, I can answer that just from personal experience. When I moved to this area 16 years ago, and I've been involved in operations at the Swansea Field since. And we've replaced the temporary fencing, I believe, 3 times. So when we look at from a cost and an operation standpoint, I think it's actually in the community, the town's benefit from a maintenance standpoint to come up with a plan that balances all uses. And that's what this latest plan does do. It allows for all of the recreational activities to exist, to still exist on the property in a responsible manner where it's going to allow for responsible investment. There's going to be people donating money. There's going to be town resources that are going to go into some improvements. I think of maybe the parking area, but it's a long-term investment. So what you want to try to do is limit the portions of a project that are going to require permanent, ongoing, perpetual money, and that's temporary fencing. I disagree with the athletic director's opinion. I think that it's been proven over time that the temporary fencing will not last that long. And so, with all due respect, we've basically gone to the tree line and put temporary fencing in to entirely open up that sliding area. The remainder of the area is very mature woods. For somebody to go in there and expand the sliding area, that would have to be another project that maybe would come before this board. And at that time, there could be considerations made of modifying the fence location. But I think for now, this is a really good plan that balances all agendas and interests. And I think it's clearly a recreational area for the community. I don't think that there's any restrictions relative to a recreation. I don't think this plan will create restrictions. I think it'll create responsible use and investment for future use.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, may I address your maintenance situation or saving? Viewing, and I'm sorry to do this, but viewing what has been done to maintain that facility right now, under the terms of the lease, is pitiful. The Cal Ripken Association is supposed to take care of the batting cages, which they have neglected. The netting, which is in there, which is still, it's neglected. You know, you look at the fields in general, all the banners, advertising banners are supposed to be down. You know, the maintenance by this association is very, very questionable. And I would think that your statement was kind of being colored as far as maintenance of the fence and stuff, because there's been a lack of maintenance or lack of air taken to what's there, that you've had to replace it more frequently.
I take exception to that with all due respect.
I'm gonna do some time on that. That's more of a, when the lease renegotiation comes up, that would be more pertinent information. Right now, we're focused on the field. Did anyone else, Kristen?
Couple of questions, clarifications. So on the center drive, sounds like it might be lawn. And I think your point about leaving some of your recommendation, I'll leave some kind of gravel path in there. People will set up, and I think that's a good one, but I can also tell you, we will put in a lot of resource, time and money on trying to get grass to grow there. So unless someone really wants it to be grass, I wouldn't bother. That soil is my soil and I can keep a lawn to save myself. So,
I have nice grass.
well, you're in a different spot. But one question on the soccer is the plan to still have the tiny tots play soccer on the like Woodland Field and the Chandler Field, or is everybody moving to the back?
Oh, no, we didn't include the fields that wouldn't be affected.
Okay.
So ideally, we still,
So you could still expand that.
oh yeah, no, we still have the two fields, but with, Chandler, potentially the two more of the, 6 or the 4 or 5 year olds. We still keep the 6 to 8 year old. Right
And-
now, we only have 2 6 to 8 year old fields, so this would allow us to have an additional one.
Okay, so that's good. And I appreciate the switch to the temporary fence for the sledge, because that was a huge thing for a lot of folks that. The last question that I have on the new plan is I guess it's permanent fencing, that goes straight down between O'Brien and West. And then there's a little bit of a break, and then there's 2 lines, and maybe those are dugouts. Does that mean that there's like a kind of like a weird jog or opening between the 2 fields? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like right here?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And normally in situations like that, there would be an offset in the fence so that, you know, people could get out into the field in those openings. So if there's the goal of that fence down the middle, which is this fence here, is to really prevent foul balls from or overthrows from entering another green that would be occurring on the adjacent field if at all possible.
Okay, so following up on that, how tall is that fence? About like a 6 foot?
It's either a 4 to 6 foot fence, just
Okay,
like.
so, you know, these fields are semi large because the kids are bigger and they're hitting farther. I'm not sure of course. Help with that all that much. Just a thought, and you know, what Richard had said, you know, that fence going down the center is another limiting factor to the overall use of those fields. Like, I see people under snowshoeing, some people are out there practicing cross country skiing. I'm sure there's other winter vehicles out there that isn't necessarily desired. But I have any comments on that. But by having that fence kind of coming down with a weird jog, are we limiting other recreational uses, or could that be? Does that have to be there, or could that? Just a thought. Again, in keeping with the, you know, the idea is to keep overthrows. That's really going to stop this overthrow, or is it just kind of delineating 2 baseball fields and maybe having it open, more flexibility in the future if someone wants to do I don't know, pickleball or softball or whatever else they could go on in there or in the winter.
You want to answer for that, John?
I mean, I certainly feel free to contribute, but
I know, I was beginning, John, like we talked about at the time. The fact is that, because you're talking about height of fence, most temporary fences, you're not gonna get any higher than 4 or 5 feet regardless, just because of the holding that would be required to hold it in place and things like that. And with it, the whole rework was really to kind of accommodate that fencing so that we just didn't delineate the two separate.
Richard, excuse me, Beverly can't hear Ashley.
No, there's a conversation going on with you at the same time, sorry.
But that was why we really came to this rework, was to avoid the temporary fence through the middle, because it was no good situation with the temporary fence in that location.
I mean, I agree that the soccer is an established program and that's like the main goal, but unless it really needed to be there, I just would hate to see us limiting other uses of that in the future, but if it can come down in the future, if somebody wants to like something else in it for the town. But just as long as there's no like weird trip hazard, if people are out there in the winter time trying to snowshoe or ski.
no,
I have seen that piece out there.
and I think the one thing that, I've talked about with, the people involved in this layout with Ashley and John primarily is, there will be gates, between the fields, there'll be gates, on the field fence on both sides, so if somebody did wanna, snowshoe or seasonal activities, those could be open. The key is really to keep vehicles and anything that can do damage to the field off the fields, because there's gonna be a lot of investment here, but permanent fencing, provides boundaries both for soccer, provides boundaries for, baseball, it provides boundary for softball if they're utilizing the field. It delineates, out of bounds territories. It really creates, organization in the layout. And it's a productive investment because this is how these fields have been used over the years, primarily for my understanding for soccer and baseball. And so we're trying to create a plan that's sustainable for both of those activities. In part of this process, which has been great, is getting the feedback about, sledding is an important use. So we've made some modifications to accommodate that while still meeting a lot of the goals and objectives of the other uses. So I personally feel like a permanent fence is a good solution there that will allow everything to, allow the fields to be utilized like they always have, with proper investment and improvements for the community.
Just have one follow-up, just to, the gates on the access drive, will those stay closed year round?
That's what the plan is currently.
Okay, good, because you will have to see the bills up there. And the last thing I want to say is, Chad, I really appreciate your explanation about the fence, that it is up to this point, all I've heard is we must have a fence that must be permanent. And there's obviously antagonism between some of the groups here, and that's unfortunate. And having a thoughtful answer. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks, Kristen. And if I heard Ashley correctly, she also supported the permanent fencing between the fields
It's my compromise.
as a, okay. All right. Anyone else? All right, well, sounds like you have the consensus that you asked for from the board. And as I mentioned to Kristen, with regard to the oversight of the planning board, we are seeking legal counsel on that. So, but you're continuing with the process with the planning board.
We have conditional approval from the
Right.
planning board, so I think tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking for approval from this board or consensus, if that's what it is, so that the work can proceed.
That was the question that got confused. Do you want consensus or do you want vote?
I think we want to vote it.
All right,
Motion
and that's to approve the plan
as presented.
as presented with the understanding that modifications that you've discussed are going to be added to the final. But in terms of the layout, working with the fields and the fencing, that's not going to change.
Correct.
Okay. You seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Richard. Thanks, Kristen. I had, oh no, excuse me, chief. I guess it was a few more minutes than what we anticipated, but welcome.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce our newest member to the police department, part-time detective Pete Bowers. He comes to us directly from the sheriff's office, where he retired from as sergeant. Pete's a resident of Swansea. Prior to working with the sheriffs, he also worked at Keene and I believe Colchester. He's a great addition. I'm very happy to have his ability and skills on our team. He's going to be a great asset.
Great. Welcome to Swansea.
Yeah, welcome
Thank you,
aboard.
thank you.
And we won't hold it against them that he worked for.
Some of those places, some of those places.
No, you don't, but there's others.
I don't care.
Thank you very much.
Duly noted.
But,
Thanks very much.
Meet everybody? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You'll come to him.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome aboard.
Good to see you.
Thank you all.
High Hazard Dam Rehabilitation Grant Program Notice of Award.
So this is good news. One of the two major funding sources we had, actually, I don't know if we identified this one, but possible funding sources for Upper Wilson Pond Dam has come through with, I think, 92% of our $1 million requests, so.
Wow.
We won't quibble yet. We'll still keep exploring the other avenues to try to make up that gap, but we look to get the board to authorize me to enter into the contract and award documents so we can get the long process of governor and council approval started.
Great.
I'll make the motion.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Job description review. Nice job. I didn't proof it, scanned it. Looked good to me.
Thank you. I mean, this is something that came out, I think both you and Sly were at the Economic Development Committee meeting a month or so ago, and it's something that has been brought up before, but I don't know, whatever Greg said at that meeting stuck to me, especially with a lot of the development projects we have going on. I know code enforcement is something that Michael has brought up, and that, there's a lot of strain on the land use office right now. And I think this, I put in here, I think it should be reviewed periodically. Certainly if it gets filled and is vacant, take a look and see if it was just kind of a temporary workflow thing that we have that need. But the more we start to develop it, and then we're looking at the job description, like, this is a lot, and it is, but it's also stuff that, we need to be on top of. So I listed the grants, and I think I even missed a couple that we have currently that we're monitoring. So we've gotten, millions of dollars over the last couple of years, and frankly, we need some help to manage it in addition to the code enforcement and other stuff. So,
Need a motion.
yes, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Fire station?
Yeah, I think this was just to kind of touch base on where the board kind of was leaning. I know we're a couple, obviously a little ways out from town meeting, but I know we started a little discussion previously, but just to touch base. And I did get bond bank preliminary interest rates. They're looking at 5+% for,
This is what were they before in the twos?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Bond rate is what, 5+%?
they're saying that's conservative, but so I don't know. I know no one probably wants to do this, but I wonder if it might be a year to try to save some money. And, with the county coming online with EMS, our needs might be changing. Just throw that out there as possible. I know it's a little bit of a step back, but if we're in a transition year and with some of these different factors, especially with the bond market as it is, just throw that out there as a possible thought, or see what the board's thoughts are at this point. Maybe just to save some money instead of proposing a bond this year.
Oh.
Or maybe in addition, I mean, one thing, you can do contingent warrant articles, so we can do an article that puts away 100 or 200,000 if the bond article doesn't pass, and that at least, it's not gonna, it's gonna take a long time to save up that amount, but even if you start, and then you can say, well, we won't put that away going forward, so it kind of offsets some of the increase for the payment of the bond. or try to scale
Well,
back. I
give-
just hate to spend more money on its design.
Yeah,
Could we use the elementary school bonds?
That's her thing.
well.
Especially if the
and
school is
given-
going for a
Given
bond.
that consideration as well. Yep. So want to hold off and think about it?
Might be wise. I don't think 5% is gonna fly.
If you have, I haven't looked at what the payment schedule looks like, but if you look at what that does to a mortgage, it's
Right.
significant.
Well, not only that, but just the inflationary pressures.
That too, yeah.
So. we would like-
So you don't have to make any final decision yet, but that's kind of where I'm at this point.
All right. We already had your update. Anything else?
Yeah, we talked about the deed for the tax deed property. I think those were.
Yeah.
Yep,
I don't know.
that was my other thing that I didn't want to forget, and so I made sure I didn't. So yeah, I think just one kind of update, because I know Mike's here and I know Route 10 is an area of interest. It's the northern part of Route 10, but we are having a listening session for the part of Keens Lower Winchester Street project, but going into Market Basket in that part of town. So we're partnering with Keen on that. There's going to be a listening session here. I think it's October 18th. It's a couple Tuesday, yeah, 2 Tuesdays from now. So I wanted to mention that we're going to be they're doing some mailings. We're going to be doing some personal invitations. Sarah and a representative from Market Basket are on the steering committee.
That's
So
for the sidewalk.
yes, yeah, it's a whole redesign, but yes, we're hoping,
Redesign,
yeah.
in addition, because.
Yeah.
6 or 7, say, or
I believe 6 p.m. So I'll send you something, but I just wanted to mention it because like I said, I know like
that's
especially
my calendar now, or doesn't get
here,
it.
guy, hey, I know how that is.
I wish they started to do some survey on that.
Good. Yeah, and we had a site walk too, Mike, on the area more, towards your neck of the woods down in that section between Gamarlos and some of those areas with an engineering firm for a proposal for a plan, project in the 10-year plan. So we're working on that as well to try to slow it down a little bit.
And that's great, because there's a lot of people coming out of that apartment complex, plus the village that cross the mountain. You can see someone get killed.
And it's extremely wide, and high speed, as you know, so.
Oh, yeah.
And Boys in Blue can do some, but they can't, be their own. So I think if we can get a redesign in there, I think that'd be positive. I did stop by the Swansea West project yesterday with Mr. Jasmine. They're making good progress. The foundations are pretty much in and looking good. So over next to Camaros, so coming right along.
Did they say when the boxes are coming?
They might have mentioned it. I didn't take note of it. I know he said he hopes to have one up and running, I think next summer and one next fall, is what it sounded like.
And some of them are coming up occupied. They're gonna actually put the families right in there. as they
Yeah,
stack them.
they've been shipped from Florida up to Pennsylvania.
Arkansas.
Yeah. Ooh, we're on public radio here. Not good. Anything else?
Just a few non-public sessions.
Michael,
Sidewalk
anything
paving,
for
that's good.
public input?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Hi, I know, that Route 10, of course, is a concern of mine, it's a concern of a lot of people. Other than that, okay, they're like
Now that one candidate put in a plug, do you want to put in a plug? Well, he just indicated, just made a little bit of a campaign speech. So, or do you-
I don't need to do a campaign speak, but if anybody wants to vote for me, I'm not gonna say no.
So I mentioned, I should have mentioned too, the Swansea Center Phase 2 sidewalk project is all paved. They still, yep.
I'm gonna winter it over, then put on the wear coat.
Right. I heard you.
Is that sidewalk gonna continue all the way down to the bridge, or is it just stopping right where they just stopped?
That's the goal. Yeah, it's
Money
not
comes in.
doing it different, doing it in phases. But yes, that's the
So
goal.
when you're elected, if you want to donate that salary that you get.
Right.
It would,
You can have all $100.
That's not, that's before taxes. I think you only get like 87.
They're asking us, when I paid, I won't be nameless, I'm making $20,000-$30,000 a year on my job.
oh, I heard that.
It costs them more than that.
You have to get the license plate, which speeds up most of the rest of it.
If you want a nameplate, that's the rest.
Really?
From what I get, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think so.
Get 2 cents if you want.
You have 2 years of not having to pay the town registration fees. That's
All
it.
right, we got to head into non-public. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Then I got it.
We'll be doing B for hiring.
Make a motion, we go in under B for hiring.
Second,
Colby,
aye.
Walker,
B.
Karazinski.
Right?